I would start with, Deck, the conversation that you and I were having to start this in the last segment, which is you're not going to get rid of gambling. There is too much money involved in it for the leagues. There is too much money involved in it for state, local, and federal government. There are too many people who are doing it now. These sports books are multi-billion-dollar a year industries, each one of them in their own individual landscape right now. There are things that can tamp it down. I am interested, and again, we don't do a lot of politics on the show out of choice, but in HR 1, the big beautiful bill that passed this week, there's actually legislation in it about sports gambling where you can only deduct 90% of your losses, meaning
it's ugly.
That if you can only deduct 90% of your losses, that means you have got to profit by now more than 10% to break even, right? Which it's a minus 110 hamper on an already minus number, for instance, which means that if you are somebody who bets 20, 30, 50, $100 bets, and you do it enough that it triggers a reporting of federal income, if you break even, you are losing 10% of the money that you bet. Well, guess what?
Yep.
If I'm only betting 10, 11 grand a year, it may not be worth it for me anymore. If you're betting hundreds of thousands of dollars, you could be on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars, even if you profit. Even if you're $5,000 over, that money is now owed because you owe 10 grand of that 100K. So that's a whole different conversation that I think is going to have a very negative impact on sports gambling, because I'm fine with the concept of taxing it, but that's a real bad way to do it. We'll circle back around to that. The players themselves, I don't really know, Deck. I've got some loose ideas, but where you go? Because again, like I would be fine if we want to say micro bets are illegal. You can't bet on the outcome of the first pitch or the outcome of the first free throw. Any situation where one player has sole dedicated control over the outcome of one incident, right? I'm not talking about the game. I'm not talking about a percentage and over and under a spread. I'm talking about a pitcher has control over one pitch. An NBA player has control over one free throw. Even with some things like running backs to fumble, right? Should we be allowed to bet on a running back over 0.5 fumbles, knowing that he could just drop the ball for that bet to hit? There's a lot of ugly to this, and I acknowledge that there's a lot of ugly to it. But I'll tell you what the first thing that I would go back to. And Deck, we talked about this on the show. I don't recall what your take on this was, but this was a concern that I had for baseball anyway. When we let Pete Rose off the hook for breaking Rule 1A that they hit you over the head with when you show up. And I understand he's dead. And I understand it's posthumous. I don't care. Because the argument now is going to be, is the punishment for getting caught in gambling, you're ejected from the game until you die? Or is it you can come back? Because I'm going to go ahead and say, if an MLB authority sits down in front of an arbitrator with a player accused of and maybe got caught gambling and says you're banned from the game, and they go, whoa, you let Pete Rose back, so why not let me have it? Well, because he's dead. That's not a legal argument. That's not going to hold up. So the Pandora's box came off with the induction of Pete, so I should say the unbanishment of Pete Rose, and I was concerned that this could open a bunch of doors. I just didn't think it was going to be a month and a half later.
I did. I couldn't believe it wasn't an hour later. Like, baseball's filled with idiots. I know, because I spent 15 years in this industry. It's not filled with the brightest guys. That's why I love what they said on Foul Territory the other day. God, who was it that was going off? Was it Kratz? Or was it, it was one of them. They're going off. Rule 21 is in every room. It's bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom. It's in the stall. It's on the wall above the mirror. It's in front of every single door you go into. 0.0% sympathy if you get caught doing this completely. By the way, Luis Ortiz this season is making $282,000, and that is 2 years pre-arb. So this is a guy that could obviously go ahead and eventually make a ton of money. At least he could have. I doubt he will now. Malik Beasley. What were these bets? Honest question. What were these possible bets? Because last year you made $7.2 million. What possible bet could you be a part of that you're willing to jeopardize your $7.2 million you just made in one season, let alone the following upcoming years you're probably going to make on top of that? It's unbelievable that these guys are this dumb. When I tell you the details of what Major League Baseball, the rule is I can't communicate that much with gamblers. I when I was a player, my ex-wife, my wife at the time, she got an offer to do a gambling show, even though she knew nothing about gambling, but she hesitated because she didn't know the rules in baseball. We actually had to ask Major League Baseball if my wife could do a show in the industry while I'm playing professional baseball. This was like real problems. Had to do a lot of digging to find out whether or not that was the case. And you mentioned the Pete Rose of it all. Dear God, dude. Dear God. Pandora's box, the celebration of everybody for what's going to happen, as if you don't realize what's about to take place. God, if you think this is just the beginning of it all, guys. You think Luis Ortiz is the only guy that's done any of this? You mentioned the micro bets that are a little harder to track, which I personally think absolutely should be illegal. But let me tell you this. Major League Baseball a few years ago had a plan in place. Whether or not it was implementable or not, I do not know. But their plan was very specifically in place, and at least the ideas of what they wanted to do. They wanted every single chair, every single chair back seat in the stadium to have an iPad on it. An iPad that is locally in front of you throughout the entire game, that you can simply swipe your card and make bets on everything taking place directly in front of you. You want to make a bet on what the next pitch is? Well, swipe your card and press this button for that micro bet. This was a legitimate plan as recently as 4 years ago, when I was told it as recently. Are they still going to do that? God, I hope not. That would be the ugliest thing in the world. That reminds me of like the stereotypical dad in 1973 at the racetrack, just sitting there with 9 tickets, just going, come on, baby, this is the one that's going to get my kid into college. I am terrified of what this can become. That somebody needs to step in. The players actually stepping out of line, maybe even a blessing in disguise, because somebody needs to put the clamps on this immediately. I thought it was going to be the Ohtani thing last year that was going to put the clamps on this just right out the gate. Clearly, that's not the case, because we got one in Major League Baseball. We now have one in the NBA. And make no mistake, the legal gambling is a great way for us to actually track the illegal gamblers out there, the bad faith actors out on the fields and the courts that are trying to manipulate the scores.
Yes, it is. Again, for those of you that have said the gambling has to stop because this happens. Listen, it's like anything else. There is a running joke. And again, we're going to be today dabbling on the world of politics. All right. It's an inevitability. There is no way around that. And with that, your personal biases based on your political philosophy are going to come into play. So just prepare yourself for that. If you disagree with us, we're here for the argument. Let's keep it sports related as we can, but there are going to be comparisons and contrast to different philosophies. I have said for a long time, if you want to get rid of the drug issue in this country, the war on drugs, I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs, because I've been outside. They're in a lot of places. It does not matter if you want to know the best way to win that war on drugs, to decriminalize them, to create a world in which they are taxed, in which they are safe, in which there is an industry in which it can be monitored where they are coming from, who has them, etc. Not only that, but you will decimate the cartels at the border that we're all so worried about right now. If you say, hey, your product's not illegal anymore, you can bring it in, and just let people do their thing, warn them about the dangers, warn them about and this can be done because, again, I can go right now 3 blocks down from my house and there's a bar that will serve me alcohol. All right. It is regulated. It is taxed heavily. You have to have the right permits in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is what it is. By driving gambling back underground, you are putting it back into the control of people who are not regulating it. You are putting it back into the control of people who are way worse people than the people who are currently in control of the oversight of this industry. Every one of you has watched a mob movie where the mob is running a sports book. I'm a big Sopranos guy. There's a whole story arc about Christopher taking over the book for that particular family. And there's a lot of bad that comes with it. So once we get that out of the way, the overall grand scheme of it, driving it underground will create more problems than you think it is going to. But I also acknowledge that having it out in the sunshine creates problems too. Yes. One of the problems that you have to discuss, one of the problems you're going to have is, for instance, the concept of an over-under line in basketball. I'm gonna go back to Beasley. Again, we don't know what the bets Malik Beasley did or did not make are. If he even made bets, because remember, he was like tens of thousands of dollars in debt to his landlord, tens of thousands of dollars in debt to a dentist. And if it was just those that came up, who the hell knows who else Malik Beasley was in tens of thousands of dollars of debt with, who did not file a court case against them. They just showed up at his house at 2:30 in the morning and threw a horse's head into his bed and said, we better get our money back, right? So, the concept of over-unders. How do we fight back against the fact that a player could go out there, get to 15 points when his over-under for the night was 15.5, and then just start chunking up bricks intentionally? We can't. But here's what we can do. What we can do is say to athletes, if we can tie you to any bet, and I don't care if it is $5 that you will or will not hit 1-3 tonight. If we tie you to any bet, you are not just banished from the game, but your name and your face and your legacy will be wiped forever. We will send out an update on every MLB 2K game that wipes you from that game.
Yep.
We will wipe you from every record book. For every game that you played, we're going to go back and take your performance off the record book and just put redacted over the top. You have to make the punishment on athletes who get involved in all this, Cody Decker. You have to make it not harsh. It has to be complete and total banishment from the history of what you did to make these people recognize that if you get involved with this, the opportunities that you will lose moving forward are a hell of a lot greater than picking up $100,000 because you got to 15 and stopped when your over-under was 15.5. So we're going to talk a lot more about this as we move forward, because it is a big deal, and it certainly is a big deal for people like me and Deck who work in this industry, for folks out there like y'all who take the time to listen to shows like this, to be betters, etc. This is going to be a big conversation moving forward.